think we are presenting, so apologies everyone for the slight delay in starting our webinar. Good afternoon. Welcome to today's webinar, which is about leveraging Cyprus as a strategic way of growing your business. My name is Fedonas, and I am a senior associate at REVERA Cyprus. A few words for Rivera, in case you don't know well. We are an international law group based in many countries and having more than 80 experts in the fields of corporate, IP, immigration, banking, tax, and many more areas. In Cyprus, we are a part of the REVERA Law Group, and we offer also a variety of services like corporate, immigration, banking, and many more. Now, moving on to today's webinar, we will go through the practical roadmap on how Cyprus can serve as the base for your business expansion, your IP ownership, and in many cases, your personal tax residency. The focus will be on what actually Cyprus can offer in practice, not only for Polish, but also for other foreign, mainly EU, tech founders, and how it can benefit IP taxation, holding structures, and relocation strategies. We will cover personal relocation options, non-dom regime, Cyprus corporate tax and incentives, as well as IP box benefits, compliance requirements, and the operational reality of being based in Cyprus. By the end, the aim is for you to know where Cyprus can fit in your structure and what steps you'd need to take if you choose to proceed. A quick note before we begin, although the webinar today is scheduled to last until 7 o'clock Cyprus time, we do expect to finish earlier, always, of course, depending on the number of questions that we will receive and answer by the end. Now, who this webinar is for, this session is targeted specifically at founders, CEOs, and CFOs of Polish and other foreign tech, gaming, and digital businesses who are evaluating relocation possibility, tax optimization, and also cross-border structuring. If you're considering shifting a part of your structure abroad in another country, monetizing intellectual property under a lower tax EU regime, or simply relocating personally as an individual to a jurisdiction with low dividend and capital gains taxation, then Cyprus is quite relevant. Everything we will cover is designed to answer the questions you're likely to deal with right now. For example, the tax strategy, substance requirements, IP structuring, and relocation. Now, I'm sure many of you ask yourselves, why Cyprus? Why should I choose Cyprus? Cyprus is attractive because it combines EU credibility with extremely competitive tax and legal conditions. For example, currently the corporate tax in Cyprus is at 12.5%. The IP box also can bring qualifying IP income down to about 2.5%. The non-dom regime, on the other hand, gives individuals zero tax on dividends, interest, and many capital gains for 17 years. Cyprus is an English law jurisdiction influenced by the UK, and also it has predictable, modern, and internationally recognized legal system. Additionally, geographically, it is nowadays a strategic hub, especially for companies operating across Europe the European Union, Middle East, and Africa. Now, these are not really theoretical advantages because they actually work in practice, and history has proven this. And as many companies use Cyprus as their core, main intellectual property and holding location. So at this point, it's important to note that Cyprus is not yet part of the Schengen zone. However, it is expected to join soon, for example, sometime in 2026 at the earliest. But the plans and the discussions are very, very, very progressed, and we expect this to happen sometime soon. Until then, non-EU national, which means it's the third country nationals, holding, for example, an employment permit in another EU country, such as Poland, cannot really transfer at the moment their employment status to Cyprus. They can, however, enter on a tourist visa. Moving on, we will discuss now about relocation basics, and we'll start with this. So EU citizens can move to Cyprus with almost no challenges. A simple registration is usually enough and quick. Now, as regards the non-EU citizens, such individuals have more formal requirements, but Cyprus, nevertheless, does offer several business-friendly residence permits aimed at specifically founders, staff, and investors. The main permit types you need to understand are work and business-based residence permit, permanent residence, either category F, as you may hear about, or in the investment route. And lastly, citizenship through naturalization over a specific amount of time. In the following slides, we will cover these three types in more details. Having said that, none of these types are complicated, but each of them has different requirements depending on your goals and whether you want a long-term residency, employment rights, or simply a tax residency. So for founders or key staff who are non-EU nationals, the two relevant models are the standard employment permit and the business facilitation fast track scheme. The fast track scheme, known also as the BFU permit, is usually the better option, which is quicker. This scheme is designed to offer foreign-owned tech and innovation companies the opportunity to hire third country national and operate in Cyprus with international outreach. It greatly simplifies hiring non-EU talent. And at this point, we should mention that, for example, our firm in Cyprus that deals with this kind of application, with several applications on a weekly basis. What is important to note here is that the requirements for such qualification are specific salary levels which need to meet immigration thresholds, documenting genuine business activities in Cyprus, which is known as the substance requirement, and also the coverage of health insurance. In this permit, family members can also be included, such as spouse or children, which is important if you're relocating with your family. Also, interestingly, by exception, it's also possible to include in this permit the parents-in-law. And usually this process of obtaining such permit, it is predictable and usually faster than in most EU countries. Now, moving on in specific to permanent residence, Cyprus has two permanent residency models that are relevant here. The first is a category F, which is the traditional income-based model suitable for financially independent individuals with stable income from abroad, outside Cyprus. In this case, you would need to show an income of around 30,000 euro per year for the main applicant. And in case there are also dependents, such as a spouse or children, there are additional amounts required to show yearly in order to qualify. Also, it's a requirement of course, to have a place to live in Cyprus. On the other hand, we have the investment-based permanent residence, which is the 300,000 euros new property route, which is the more popular and faster one. This also covers the whole family and grants permanent residency status from that moment of approval. This requires an investment of 300,000 euros to buy a new property in Cyprus. Now, having gone through these two specific permanent residents, it should be noted that these kind of permits do not give you an employment right automatically. Moving on to citizenship by naturalization. In Cyprus, it's no longer possible to get a fast-track investment citizenship. Today, citizenship is earned through long-term residence. This means that you may be eligible to obtain a citizenship through 80 years of legal residence in Cyprus. However, this can also be reduced to 5 years under specific requirements. This accelerated route, it was introduced in Cyprus recently, and it concerns high-skilled and highly specialized professionals. In particular, these professionals need to be highly skilled in the IT sector, which can shorten the required residence period of time in certain cases from 8 years to 5 years. Now, this is not automatic, and it should not be compared to the old traditional investment scheme, but it does give an option for faster eligibility where someone is genuinely contributing at a high professional level in Cyprus in the IT sector. Such applicants of this citizenship permit must be lawful residents, and they must maintain continuous presence in the year before applying. So they should not be away from Cyprus for long before applying. And must, of course, also meet language requirements, Greek language requirements, and have a clean criminal record. It is not a quick route to obtain the citizenship. It is a long-term plan for people who genuinely want to spend their lives in Cyprus. Moving on to the practical relocation points. If you're considering moving, planning ahead is important. Decide early whether you'll be employed in a company in Cyprus or acting, for example, as a director and receiving a management fee, because this affects tax residency and social insurance. Cyprus banks also should be noted that they apply strict AML, anti-money laundering rules. So we should prepare documentation for such matters as source of wealth and the business history of an individual. Also, whether you will rent a property in Cyprus or buy a property in Cyprus, both are fine. But if you're aiming for example, permanent residence or substance, it is important to examine which option is best. After your arrival in Cyprus, you will need to register for tax, social insurance, if relevant, and also apply for the non-dom status, which will benefit you in terms of taxation. Also, it's important to track the number of days in these cases, as the immigration department takes very seriously into account this matter. Now, in relation to the personal tax landscape, Cyprus uses two alternative tests for tax residency. The first is the classic 183-day rule, which is the more straightforward one. And the second one is the 60-day rule, which is the key advantage for international founders. Under, for example, the 60-day rule, you can become a Cyprus tax resident by spending at least 60 days in Cyprus. Also, you should not be a tax resident in another country in that year and keep a home in Cyprus, spend money in Cyprus in daily typical expenditure like going to the supermarket. So, because the authorities will need proof of such expenses and having a business or employment relationship here. Now, for example, we have had cases in the past where an individual only came to Cyprus in October, and they were indeed able to obtain the 60-day rule tax residency because they were able to rent a place or buy a property in Cyprus and live here for at least 60 days, and this made them qualify for the tax residency. Once you're a tax resident in Cyprus, Cyprus taxes worldwide income, so any income you may have from any territory of the world is going to be taxed in Cyprus. However, thanks to the non-dom regime that we mentioned, the most important income types for founders are effectively exempted. Now let's move on to the non-dom regime to speak more specifically about what is this and what are the benefits. The Cyprus non-dom status, it can be considered as extremely powerful and very beneficial if you're a tax resident in Cyprus, but you're not domiciled in Cyprus, meaning you're originally from another country. You pay zero tax on dividends, zero tax on most types of interest, and zero tax on many capital gains. This applies whether the income comes, for example, from Polish companies, Cyprus companies, or any foreign investments. The only major exception is that gains from is for the capital gains from Cyprus real estate. This non-dom regime lasts for 17 years, and you only mandatory contribution is for the health insurance in Cyprus, known as ESE, the general health system, um, which is reasonably limited to a specific amount. So a few examples of the non-dom regime in these cases. For example, dividends from a Polish company will be taxed at 0% in Cyprus. Dividends from your Cyprus operating company would also be zero. Interest on loans you extend to group companies are also generally 0%. And lastly, if you sell shares in a foreign company, this is also taxed at 0% in Cyprus. Having said these benefits about tax in Cyprus in the case of a non-dom regime, it's always important to consider any tax and CFC rules in the other countries, such as Poland. But from the Cyprus side, the structure is extremely efficient and predictable. Now, in relation to individual business models, you can structure your personal involvement in Cyprus in a number of ways. For example, as an employee of your Cyprus company, which also allows you to benefit from the 50% income tax exemption in case you are a high earner. We will cover this in more detail further below. Many founders mix salary and dividends. Salary can help with substance requirements and social insurance. And dividends, on the other hand, can be tax-free for non-dom regime. The system is flexible, and you can adapt it to your needs, and we are always ready to offer such advice and help with the strategy to be followed. Now, in relation to setting up a business in Cyprus, the most common type of business is the private limited liability company, which is the default vehicle for almost all international business setups. It is flexible and very well understood by local banks and other parties that the company may be going to contracts with. And it also gives a clear governance structures. Now, there are other types of this business in Cyprus, such as branches of foreign companies, but these are rarely optimal, and especially for IP or holding structures, the limited company is more relevant. It gives you limited liability, so the shareholders are protected in these cases, and a clean share structure for investors. Whether a company wants to attract investors, it's easy to understand the situation of the company and the structure. Now, I'm sure you are curious to know what is the incorporation process of a limited company in Cyprus looks like, how much time it takes, and so on. Now, the incorporation is relatively quick. First, we need to reserve a name for the company by applying to the registrar of companies. And then we must file the memorandum and articles of association, shareholder details about directors also, and secretary, and the register office. With selecting the priority processing in Cyprus, most companies can be incorporated within 15 to 20 business days. In these cases, we need to make sure that we have sufficient KYC documents, as Cyprus is an EU jurisdiction, so AML rules apply properly. After the incorporation of the company, there are specific obligations that the company needs to comply with. These include mainly the obligation to do audited financial statements every year, the annual returns filing to the Register of Companies, and also to maintain sufficient records and registers in the company office. This is, of course, a standard EU compliance, and in all cases, we can help with this kind of situation. Also, many companies choose to be provided with nominee services, nominee directors, Therefore, we can offer these services and also secretarial services. Now, as regards the corporate governance and substance, it is very important to establish substance of a company in Cyprus, especially for tax residency and cross-border protection. Cyprus must be the real place of management. That means the majority of directors should be Cyprus-based. This also applies for nominee directors. It's okay. And the board meetings should take place in Cyprus. Also, the strategic decisions should be taken here. This all is very important for the substance requirement. Now, for IP or holding companies, this becomes even more important because substance does not mean you need a big office, but you do need credibility in terms of governance and decision making in Cyprus. Let's move on and speak more specifically about the corporate taxation. As I said at the beginning, the corporate taxation in Cyprus at the moment is at 12.5%. However, it should be noted at this point that from the 1st of January 2026, this corporate tax will go slightly upwards to 15%. This is, of course, not something that Cyprus alone is implementing, but is important for compliance with the international obligation to raise the corporate tax. However, in this case, what really matters is the exception to the income. For example, gains on the sale of shares or qualifying securities are tax-free. Many dividends that are received are tax-free also, as long as the foreign subsidiary is not passive. Profits from foreign permanent establishments can also be exempt. Now, structuring IP, holding, and financing operations correctly can bring your effective tax even lower, especially when combined with the IP box regime or the NID. I will explain in more detail soon. Firstly, the IP box regime is one of the most founder-friendly regimes in the EU for tax. Qualifying IP income receives an 80% reduction. In this case, this means that only the 20% of the qualifying IP income will be taxed at 12.5%, or from 2026, it will be 15%. The result in this case will be an effective tax rate of about 2.5% or 3% in 2026. To qualify for the IP box regime, you will need to meet the modified nexus rules and approach, meaning that your company must have undertaken research and development activities in relation to the IP. For software companies, this is usually achievable. You simply need to proper tracking and keep sufficient records of all the costs and revenues for the IP asset. Now, in this case, it should be noted that there is no specific certification that is issued by the government that can officially, formally say that the company X has qualified for the IP box regime. However, what is being done is through preparation of a of a report by the expert tax and auditors, we obtain a tax ruling from the ministry in Cyprus, which, having reviewed the specific plan of the company, it can say that in accordance with this plan that you have presented to me, you are qualifying for the IP box regime. So, moving on, we also have the benefit of the notional interest deduction in Cyprus. The notional interest deduction, or otherwise known as NID, is an equity incentive. Instead of funding your Cyprus company with loans, you can fund it through equity and receive a notional interest deduction on that equity. Depending on the interest reference rates, this can reduce the effective tax rate to roughly 2 to 5% on certain type of profits. It's especially useful for holding companies and IP companies. Many groups use equity and NID instead of shareholder loans for this particular reason. Now, Cyprus is generally 0% on withholding tax on outbound dividends, interests, and royalties. The only exception is where there is a blacklisted or non-cooperative jurisdiction where withholding tax can apply. However, for companies like Polish companies and other EU companies, the withholding tax position remains very favorable in Cyprus. Now, as regards the doing business in Cyprus, you can hire employees or contractors depending on your operational model. In Cyprus, the employment law is very reasonable and the termination rules are balanced. Setting up payroll is also straightforward. Now, for non-EU staff from third countries, Cyprus offers a major advantage through the business facilitation scheme. Once your company is accepted into the scheme, you can issue fast-track work and residence permit for highly skilled non-EU employees who are, for example, from third countries. This is extremely useful for tech companies that rely on international talent. To qualify for such a scheme, the company must show a capital injection of 200,000 euros into a Cyprus bank account coming from abroad and maintain also a real presence office in Cyprus. The scheme allows a company to hire up to 70% of staff from outside European Union. And this depends, and also these individuals that will work from outside the EU in Cyprus can also bring their dependents, such as spouse and children, in Cyprus. Finally, again, about Cyprus banks and service providers, they need to apply strict anti-money laundering rules. So it is important to be prepared to provide clean documentation on ownership and the ultimate beneficial ownership of a company to show the source of funds and wealth and the business activity of such a company. Once everything is in order, the system can work very smoothly. However, we need to approach this very professionally and with the correct paperwork. Now, for Polish and other EU tech groups, the common structure is a common structure is as follows. The local company in Poland can handle the development and the day-to-day operations, while a Cyprus company can sit above the Polish company as the IP owner and or the holding company. The Cyprus entity will own the software, it can license it out, and also receive the IP income. It can also hold other European subsidiaries and can take dividends tax-free. So Cyprus can own the IP and operate in this way. This structure is able to protect usually the company from any CFC rules of other countries, but it's important to also establish a substance in Cyprus. This means we need to have for the Cyprus company, Cyprus tax resident directors to do the real decision making in Cyprus. And of course, in the case of IP Box, we need to show the research and development activity in Cyprus. This structure has been tried and tested many times through the recent years. But of course, like any cross-border structure, it must be maintained properly. Now, Cyprus as a holding and investment hub can be extremely effective. Um, in the case of disposal of shares is usually tax-free. Also, distributions to non-dom individuals are also tax-free. Dividends received from subsidiaries across the EU are usually exempted. From a banking perspective, Cyprus banks prefer clean, well-documented structures. Many clients also can use European electronic money institutions for day-to-day payments. For example, some clients, companies where the ultimate beneficial owner is maybe from a specific jurisdiction or country, Cyprus banks can be very difficult to approve the background. Therefore, the clients many times choose to operate through electronic money institution accounts, which is also working perfectly fine. Now, as a key takeaway from this point is that the common mistakes that needs to be avoided is to have zero substance or mixing the company's operation with high-risk jurisdictions, and also not providing sufficient documentation for KYC. Now, in terms of lifestyle in Cyprus, Cyprus can offer a strong lifestyle advantage on top of the tax and legal benefits. For example, English language is widely used in business and court proceedings here in Cyprus, but also in everyday life. With over 300 days of sunshine in Cyprus, a large expat community from third countries, and low crime rates, Cyprus is considered a very stable and comfortable base. Uh, on the other hand, while housing can be more expensive in certain cities in Cyprus, like Limassol, it can be still very competitive compared to other Western Europe countries. Now, in relation to the steps most companies follow when they incorporated in Cyprus, is that first we need to decide the correct structure and where the intellectual property will sit and who will manage it. Once this is decided, then we proceed with the formation of the Cyprus company and the setup of proper governance, meaning to ensure substance of the company, choose the right directors, secretary, and register office. Then we move on to start the proceedings of opening a bank account, either at a Cyprus bank account, bank institution, or EMI, like for example, Unlimited, Payable, Brain Rocket, and so on. There are many options here in Cyprus. Then the founders of the company may choose to obtain the residency and become tax residents of Cyprus. Also, implementing IP box or the notional interest deduction is important if relevant to the specific company. Additionally, we will need to consider the model of operating the company. Is it gonna employ people or work through the contractors from internationally? And lastly, the company needs to comply with ongoing obligations such as for tax filings, accounting, and maintaining the records at the registered office. Now, for example, for a relocation to Cyprus by a founder, let's say that a founder relocates to Cyprus and he becomes a non-dom resident in Cyprus, and also structures their compensation through a mix of salary and dividends. At this point, we have gone through the slides, and I will be happy to take any of your questions. Feel free to ask about the structuring or the tax residency or any migration questions in relation to you or your business. So I can see we have a few questions. So let's go through these. So we can see here a person asks whether the application processes or requirements vary based on the passport or nationality of the business owner or founder. Now, in this case, if you're referring to the BFU registration, where a company can obtain a permit to employ in Cyprus individuals from third countries, then yes, typically the owner must be a third country national in order to register with the BFU to obtain approval and start hiring third country nationals. Another question is that whether for a health tech company dealing with sensitive patient data, how strict is Cyprus enforcement of GDPR and similar privacy regulations compared to other EU jurisdictions? In this case, I would say that there are no really much flexibility or shortcuts in Cyprus about the GDPR because the enforcement is the same with any other European country, as Cyprus is part of the European Union and we have adapted the GDPR rules. It is very important to comply with such rules. Another question is how does the local law protect intellectual property for IT products in Cyprus? The intellectual property in Cyprus is quite protected with full European Union structure standards. For example, software as an IP is automatically protected in Cyprus under the local copyright law. There is no registration needed to protect a software. What is needed is proof in writing, in any form of writing, that this software it has been created and it exists. Now, in relation, of course, to patents and trademarks, these are fully protected once they are properly registered with the relevant intellectual property office in Cyprus. Let's see, we have one more question. Another person asks whether they say that everyone is talking about Cyprus being great for business expansion, but are there any types of business that shouldn't move here? Are there, for example, any government programs, subsidies in Cyprus to help new business with their initial setup costs? And also, what is the biggest mistake that foreign companies usually make when they register a business in Cyprus? From my experience, there are no particular help that a company can get a benefit from when incorporating company in relation to these costs. There may be a few, but they can be quite targeted and selective. In case a client is interested in finding out more about such subsidies, they can reach out to us, and we're always happy to assist any way that we can. Now, in relation to whether there are any business that should not move to Cyprus, um, I think it's more important to first to say what type of business work best in Cyprus. And as you may already know, that we have a huge ecosystem of tech companies in Cyprus, which include gaming, financial technology, and also general holding companies and IP ownership companies. Now, due to the small local market, for example, a manufacturing company would not could benefit more from bigger markets in other European countries. In relation to the question about what are the kind of mistakes that many companies, foreign companies make when registering a company in Cyprus, it's very important to repeat again the importance of substance requirements. Depending on the structure of your company and your group, depending on what you are seeking to benefit from incorporating company in Cyprus, it's really important to make sure the substance requirement is here. For example, have real activity in Cyprus and have the decision making in Cyprus. Some companies many times underestimate these requirements, and they may find themselves in very difficult situation in relation to tax and other audit implications. As regards the IP box, it's very important to carry out the research and development activities on the IP in Cyprus. If this is not done correctly or records are not kept correctly in the company, then there is a risk of not qualifying in the end for the very beneficial low tax on the income. So it's really important to follow these rules very carefully and have the correct consultants and advisors in these cases. So I'm not sure if we have any more questions. Great. I think we don't have any more questions at this point. Please feel free to reach out to us at any point of time. You can get in touch and we can arrange a quick call consultation if you have any specific questions to go through. We're always happy to assist. Thank you very much for your attendance today, and we hope to keep in touch.